This is John Kohler with GrowingYourGreens.com. Today I have another exciting episode for you. And today we're going to answer a few viewers' questions. And actually, this has been a very popular subject, actually. I've gotten a lot of emails and questions regarding this, and I thought I'd answer it once and for all in detail. I have had a question such as this one in past episodes, and I talked about it a little bit, but I'm really going to kind of dive into my thoughts about what we're going to talk about today. So once again, if you guys have a question, the best place to post it is actually on my YouTube comments page. So go to my channel page and go to discussion. You could enter your comment there, or if you email it to me through the email system on YouTube, I will also get it, and I may answer it in a video such as this one. So I apologize, I can't answer all the questions I get because I get so many questions, and I got a normal life to lead. I got to work my job, and I do my gardening and all kinds of other stuff. So I guess without further ado, let's get into today's questions. Let's see. Tall Starlight asks, John, what do you think of the Mittleider method? They call for fertilizers weekly and claim it's organic certified. Please clear this up for me because everything points to it being true except what I have heard from you. Which it's better to use compost, rock dust, worm castings, and teas, and so on, which I am growing in right now, but everything seems to be in slow motion compared to my next door neighbors using Mittleider magic fertilizers. Thanks. Before I answer that question, let's go on to the next two as well. Let's see, next one is from MR Lee. John, could you give us your take on Mittleider gardening at some point? I feel it is an unsustainable method based on chemical fertilizers and does not improve the soil, but would like to know your feelings on it. Thanks. Alright, we won't answer that one yet. Let's read the last one. It's from Vaughn Leacham. John, dude, I wouldn't normally ask, but this guy spreading chemical gardening as organic blocks people and deletes comments from those who mention permaculture, especially those, read me, who delve further into it, attempting to be nice and share the love of gardening with nature. Opposed to chems, people are subbing this guy like crazy. It's factory farming, dude. He's setting this community back. IMHO. In my humble opinion, that's what that stands for. Though I see he wants to produce good, healthy plants and is a keen gardener, just a little misguided. IMHO. If I am wrong about this, I'm always willing to learn. Help. Faithfully, Vaughn. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about all these different questions. First, we'll go back to the first one from Tall Starlight. John, what do you think of the Mittleider methods? Alright, so the Mittleider method is a specific way of gardening, and a guy wrote a book on this a long time ago, and he did a lot of work to figure out the best way back then on how to grow food sustainably all over. And so we came up with a system, and systems are very good because it allows the average novice person without any formal garden training, without becoming a master gardener, to grow successfully and easily the first time. And in this systems, there's many different aspects of the Mittleider gardening system. So for me to say, oh, that thing's a piece of crap, it would be wrong, because in every system, there's always pros and cons to every different aspect of the system. Some of the aspects of the system is that they make a grow box, which is akin to a raised bed. And I definitely think raised beds and grow boxes are really good. Another thing they do is they plant things particularly closer than normal, and they trellis things up, which is also similar to the square foot gardening method that I use, and I think that's excellent. Another thing they do is actually they have an irrigation system where they water just the roots of the plants so they don't waste water and they conserve water. And once again, I think this is fabulous, and everybody should conserve water and put the water where the plants need it in the root zone by either drip irrigation or, even better yet, subsoil irrigation. Another method of the Mittleider method is actually starting your seeds inside early to get a jump on the season, which I also absolutely agree with. Now, probably the main source of contention is this next aspect that I'm going to talk about. In the Mittleider gardening method, the Mittleider system, they say there's nutrients that the plant needs. 3 could get obtained from the air, and 13 needs to become, and we need to add into the soil because the soils are depleted. So I definitely agree with some of that statement. Plants need a lot of nutrients. I wouldn't necessarily say they only need 16. Most gardeners may add 3 nutrients back into their soil, NPK, which is like the numbers on every fertilizer bag you buy. So at least the Mittleider method expands that to a total of 16 nutrients that you're going to be adding. Basically 13 of them are in little mineral packs or trace mineral packs. And as you guys know, I'm a really big fan of trace minerals, so I think this is really excellent. Now, where the Mittleider method, gets a little bit hairy, and once again in this video, I'm only going to explain my opinions about this gardening method, and my opinions are simply that. And I want to remind you guys get what you pay for. All my videos are free. These are sharing my opinions based on my, experiences being a gardener, being into growing the natural way and all this kind of stuff. And I'm never gonna say one method is right or wrong. Of course, if you're spraying toxic herbicides, pesticides, and GMOs, I'd probably say that's wrong. But most gardening methods, they have their pros and cons. And these are my opinions, not to say to make any one gardening method right or wrong. You guys got to find the right gardening method for you, and that's what I'm all about. I like to share all my ideas and all different products so that you guys could figure out what you want to use and what works best for you. And of course, if you want to follow what I do, of course I show you guys exactly what I do, so you can model that if you desire to see the results you're going to get. Based on what I do and my results and my goals and values, what I do works great, and I always continually strive to improve. So let's get back into the question. So the challenge with the Mittleider method is that they use in most cases, and especially how it's portrayed on YouTube and other videos, they use a standard fertilizer from a bag from a big box store. 15 15 15, 13 13 13, 16 16 16, and these are basically man-made synthetic chemical fertilizers. Are those good or bad? Well, if you guys watched the last episode, you'd kind of get my opinions on that. I'm not a big fan of those. But if using synthetic chemical fertilizers allows you to grow a garden and you would not grow a garden otherwise, I'm all for it, because I'm all about, you guys need to start taking some control, some power back into your hands by growing your own food and instead of letting, industrial agriculture grow your food, because they're only adding 3 minerals, and at least the Mittleider method adds, about a baker's dozen more, which is good. But I think you guys could do a lot better. Next, in general, let's talk about the Mittleider method and some of the marketing behind it, and why people may want to do it, and also let's talk about organic gardening and some of the differences. So the Mittleider method, in my opinion, they say our method gives a plant everything it needs, and they're really big on that. And giving that plant everything it needs is the 16 different nutrients. Now, is it true that a plant only needs 16 nutrients and that's everything the plant needs? I mean, I don't know about you, but I haven't talked to any plants lately to find out if they only need 16 nutrients. In my humble opinion, I think, plants need far more than just 16 nutrients, and I want to supply the plant everything it needs. I mean, if you guys go to a buffet where they have an all-you-could-eat and they have like, a pizza counter, a hamburger counter, a salad counter, a dessert bar, I mean, you guys could choose anything you want, and by the end, you're going to get everything you need. But imagine if you go into, that same all-you-could-eat buffet and they only have the salad counter. Half you guys out there would probably starve, because you wouldn't want to just eat salad. You'd want a pizza or a hamburger or something else, right? So that's like what I feel about like plants, right? I don't want to just give the plants a salad bar table. I want to give them everything they need and give them the choices, and that's why I choose to put from 70 to 90 different nutrients in my soil, plus the whole host of other things as well, to build the soil, the beneficial microbes, fungi, and bacteria. Oh, and don't forget the fun girls. So, to me, gardening is a lot more than just giving the plant everything it needs. I mean, that's more akin to like hydroponic growing. And actually, in the Mittleider method, they're not really concerned about the soil you're growing in. In many cases, they recommend, oh yeah, just bring in some sawdust to grow in, because to them, the soil is inert. And I mean, this is a pro and a con. This means you could grow pretty much anywhere in the world, whether you live in a desert or wherever the conditions are, because the soil is not a factor. You're not fostering life in the soil. Basically, the soil is there just to hold the roots, pretty much like in a soilless hydroponic system. And while those systems and those growing methods can work great, I'm not a big fan of them. That being said, I will start growing hydroponic one of these days when I get a system up and going, because once again, I think growing some food is far better than buying your food at the grocery store. Another thing I want to talk about is about growing organically. I mean, this is often misconstrued. I mean, there's no definition of what is growing organically. I grow organically, but my neighbor next door could also be growing organically, but you know, he could be growing organically because he's just not spraying stuff and he just took some seeds and planting in the ground, and he's not using compost, he's not using rock dust, he's not using any compost teas, he's not using worm castings, he's not using kelp meal, like things that I would use. So I mean, he could also be using cow manure, and I rarely, if ever, use any high volume of cow manure. So there's many different ways to do organic gardening, so that's where some confusion could get in. Like, you know, in my opinion, there's definitely you know, good, better, and best ways to do organic gardening, and you know, I like to think that I'm kind of like more near the best side and try to do everything I can to nurture the soil, to build it up so that, you know, it can literally take care of me. And on the other side of organic gardening, you could literally just plant in the ground without adding anything, and you're just organic because you're not spraying and you're not adding anything, you're doing things naturally. And while that can work depending on where you live and the fertility of your soil, I think that's not maybe the optimal thing. You know, the next thing might be over just adding just some cow manure, you know, but your soil still may be too hot, may burn, all kinds of stuff. So there's no general definition of organic, but at least with the Mittleider method, there's a specific system and they tell you what to do, and you're definitely going to get some proven results depending on where you live and whatnot. Because I have read, you know, different forums that some people trying the Mittleider method, it just doesn't work in their climate zone. So that's also something to consider. Next, let's get into more about the Mittleider method. And I want to read this off for you. This is actually from the Mittleider gardening website. It says, the Mittleider Magic Natural Mineral Nutrients are essential plant foods mixed in a balanced formula to give your plants just what they need for fast and healthy growth. And the micronutrients are the part everyone else leaves out. This is the linchpin, the key to great garden in any soil. Get yours today, right here. Only $13.95 for 2 10-ounce packets. So basically you're going to spend about 14 bucks for 20 ounces, and they're probably also going to add shipping on there for you. So without shipping, that works out to be $11.16 per pound of trace minerals, of about 13 trace minerals, I believe. And man, that's quite expensive. I get a bag of azomite or Gaia Green glacial rock dust for sometimes, man, I buy the Gaia Green, it's 50 pounds for about 16 bucks. So I mean, that's significantly cheaper. I mean, that's because I have a good source near me. If you're not able to get the source that I'm at and have a nursery near you that sells it, which most places don't sell that stuff, you can order it online, and it works out to be about $1 a pound for some good rock dust trace minerals. Or you can get something like the C90 or Ocean Solutions, which are also good ways to add like 90 minerals back in your soil instead of just the 13 at a much more affordable cost. So what you're supposed to do is take these Mittleider Magic Minerals and mix that in with some 15-15-15 Epsom salts for weekly feeding. And every week you need to feed your plants the mixture because they need to get their nutrients, because once again the soil is inert, devoid of nutrition. So you could go down to your Walmart and get 15-15-15, and most gardeners, that's exactly what they're doing. They're just using conventional bag fertilizer put in their garden. So at least with the Mittleider method, you're adding more minerals, you know, which is definitely a good thing because your plants do need more minerals or nutrients than just the 3 that's in a standard bag fertilizer. So I think that's definitely excellent. But you know, I always want to take it to the next level and do even better, because there's always a way to improve. And as I grow on in life and as a gardener, you know, I always strive to improve and learn new things to make my garden better. So before I get into my 6 reasons on why I don't use the Mittleider method, I do want to mention that, you know, the Mittleider method does have some benefits. I mean, with every gardening system, there's always pros and there's always cons. You got to kind of weigh that balance out on which is going to be best for you. I mean, one of the benefits to the Mittleider gardening method is that it's a method. Especially, this is especially important if you're a new gardener and you don't want to have to go through the learning curves. You don't want to have to figure things out. I mean, it's more like you're a drone or you're a clone and you just want to just do it and it works. I mean, you know, with the Mittleider method, for the most part, you don't have to use your God-given brain to think, because they lay out everything for you, and you can get success as a gardener really easily. That being said, I always want to encourage you guys to use your God-given brain, because, you know, God, nature gave us the brain to use to think critically. And, you know, it kind of perturbs me sometimes when people are just the sheeple and follow things, you know, without thinking things through. So no matter what video you're watching on YouTube, I'll always encourage you guys to use your brain and really think about if it makes sense to you or not. And I won't put a judgment on anything, but I want you guys to think instead of just follow blindly. So that's definitely something to think about. With that, I want to get into the 6 reasons why I don't personally use the Mittleider method, and these are, once again, reasons you may want to consider as well. Number 1, disrespectful. In my opinion, the Mittleider method is disrespectful because it disrespects the soil organisms, man. You're like putting them down because they are not needed in the Mittleider method. The soil is inert. It's just the holder of the roots that you can put your nutrients in that can be basically leach through the nutrients and the roots can absorb them. I mean, you're disrespecting all the soil microbes. I mean, there's like fungi, beneficial fungi, bacteria, beneficial nematodes, protozoa, earthworms, all in the soil that God put here for a reason. And if He put them here for a reason, I mean, why do you want to, go against God's system of how nature works, how ecosystems and great huge forests and rainforests have been working for millions of years? I mean, they don't use the Mittleider method in the rainforest, man. That's nature systems, hard at play, hard at work, and that's the system that I try to do in my garden. So I want to appreciate nature instead of disrespect nature. Another thing that I think about is that the Mittleider method is more similar to actually hydroponics than actually real in-soil gardening because, the soil is inert. It's just the carrier of the roots. And, to me, this is like man is smarter than nature, or you could say man is smarter than God because God put things here on earth for a reason. And when we're trying to make it better than what God does, maybe we're playing God. So, I'm not too much into that whole philosophy. So I want to and choose to respect the earth, respect the creatures on the earth, including the soil microbes, and live in harmony with the earth as much as I possibly can. Number 2 reason is pollution. If you're thinking, what, John, pollution? Like driving my car? That's like pollution. Well, in my opinion, using man-made factory chemical, water-soluble fertilizers, right, that basically leach through the ground, go into the water table, and cause runoff, and will probably even over time build up excess salts in your soil to pollute it. You have to actually throw it out and get new stuff, is a form of pollution. So if we look at what's happening at the Gulf of Mexico, all the runoff from the farmers of the Midwest are running off and creating dead zones where things cannot grow. I mean, is this fostering life? Is this what God wants for us, is to create dead zones and lifeless place? I mean, that may be the end of everything if all the soils are eroded to nothingness. So in my opinion, it's probably better not to pollute your soils by using these mineral salts that are going to wash through, pollute the water table and also the land you own. I do have a good video that I uploaded just last video actually, where I talk more about this with Josh from the Boogie Brew Company if you want to learn more. Reason number 3, in my opinion, why I do not use the Mittleider method is because it's unsustainable in the long term. Now, what do I mean by unsustainable? I mean, that word is commonly overused in our language these days. To me, unsustainable means, if there is an economic collapse, World War III, and all the fertilizer stores closed down, you couldn't buy your 15-15-15 fertilizer anymore to put in your Mittleider gardening method. I mean, yes, you might have some stored up for 5 years or 10 years, but what about after that? I mean, you're going to be screwed. You're not going to have your fertilizer, so you won't be able to grow. So that, in my opinion, is unsustainable. Plus, it's unsustainable from what I just talked about, from the pollution aspect. Pretty soon you'll get salt buildup or a nutrient buildup in your soil, and you will not be able to grow anything in your soil, and you'll have to replace the soil. And what happens when you run out of soil to replace the soil you're growing in? Well, then you're kaput. And also, what about when the water-soluble fertilizers wash through and contaminate your water supply? Then where are you at? Then you can't drink the water. You can't even use that water to grow your plants because it'll create a dead zone. And I talked about that in the last part. So, in my opinion, the Mittleider method, as shown in other videos on YouTube, is definitely unsustainable. Reason number 4 why I don't use the Mittleider gardening method is because you're creating dependence. You're creating dependence on your plants for you to fertilize it in your weekly feeds. Plus, this also ties your ass down so you can't go on vacation and do other things in life, because you got to feed your plants every week, because if they don't get their shot, their boost of fertilizer, they're not going to do as well. They're not going to perform because they are dependent on you for their success. And I don't like codependent relationships, and I don't like dependent plants either. I want to create, independence with my plants and also in my relationships. And so how can we create independence with our garden? Well, in my garden that you see behind me, I have zillions, bazillions, and trillions of workers in there right now. You're like, John, I don't see any elves behind you. I don't see any gnomes or Oompa Loompas working behind you. Well, that's because you guys don't see these guys. The workers that I have in my garden are underneath the soil. They're in the soil. They're the earthworms that you're not seeing. They're the bacteria, the fungi, the protozoa that are in the soil gobbling up different things, and they're all pooping out nutrients for the plants. So literally, my soil creates its own fertilizer that can nourish the plants so that they can continue to live. I mean, this is how nature works in the forest, in systems that were here, that God created for us naturally over thousands of years. And so by using the Mittleider method, you're gonna have to work more. And yes, while it may work and give you results, it's totally going against God's principles and nature at the same time. Reason number 5 why I do not use the Mittleider method is because, in my opinion, it creates substandard food. John, I heard the Mittleider method creates more nutrient-dense food than conventional food and even some organic foods. And yes, that's totally accurate. But to me, I like to think of what I'm growing, by adding 70 to 90 trace minerals and building the soil microbiology, growing some of the highest food. Some of the methods of some of the research I've seen on farms growing food. I mean, some of the different lycopenes and antioxidant levels and nutrition levels are significantly higher in foods where the soil is nurtured in such a way that I'm doing versus a conventional method, or in a method that's better than conventional but not quite as good as adding 90 minerals and allowing your plants to select, the minerals they need to perform well and to be fully expressed. I mean, imagine raising your kid, and I do not recommend doing this, on nothing but Snickers bars. I mean, we all know if you give a kid only Snickers bars, the kid's going to be deficient in some nutrients. He might not grow as tall. He's not going to be a basketball player. And frankly, he probably won't be healthy either. And then imagine raising a kid on homegrown food, things only you produced in your backyard, in your backyard urban homestead, and feeding the kid the best stuff ever. I mean, he has the best possible chance of being the healthiest and strongest and growing the tallest and being quicker, having more brain clarity, mental energy, and be able to do the stuff he does. And I kind of look at my plants in my garden like that. I want to give them everything they need so that they could produce the highest quality food, be the healthiest for me, and produce more and better food for me. Instead of having only, 16 nutrients, I give my plants 90 plus nutrients, easy. And that's what I recommend for you guys as well. I mean, after all, one of my goals, my top goal in having a garden is not to grow for no money, to grow frugally, to grow cheaply, not to have it simple. My number one goal, and I will do anything to reach this goal, is to grow the most nutrient-dense foods possible, because money cannot buy nutrient-dense foods in our society. In our society, foods in conventional agriculture, no matter what kind of food they are grown for one thing and one thing only. That's the profit, man. The whole economic system is driven by profit, not by the nutrition in the food. Let me tell you, I almost lost my life when I was younger. The doctors told me that I might not make it out of the hospital alive. When you're in that situation, you'll think long and hard about what is really important. Saving a couple $5 on some fertilizer, some methods, having it easy to grow a garden, easy to get big, nutrition poor produce. What I think now is that I want to make every bite count. Every bite of food I want to eat the highest quality stuff so that I don't end up in the hospital again because the doctor said I had complement immune deficiency, that I could be stricken with any other disease at any time and be back in the hospital. I could be in the position where the doctors say, John, you might not make it out alive again. And, I'm not going to put myself in that situation. So for me, my garden and growing nutrient-dense food is my answer. And yes, if it's hard, if there's hurdles to overcome, I'm all for it, because my goal is to grow the most nutrient-dense foods as possible. If you want to do that, you might want to follow some of the things I've learned and I do, and that's why I do them, not to save money, not to be frugal, or anything else, but to grow the most nutrient-dense foods possible in the most sustainable way possible. And I know some of you guys are thinking, John, shipping rock dust across the country is not sustainable. Well, I have local sources of rock dust, and I always encourage you guys to do the most sustainable thing you possibly can that meets your goals and your needs and values in gardening. Another thing I want to talk about is, does size matter? Now, if you're a girl, you might say size definitely matters, and I think I'm a decent size. But with food and growing food, does size matter? I mean, I've seen nutritional analysis on big, large, conventionally grown cabbages that look great, but is there the nutrition, the vitamins, minerals, and more importantly, the phytochemicals and antioxidants and things that really feed us, nourish us, give us protection from diseases that are out there? You know, from the research I've done, I don't always see a correlation is bigger equal better. You know, it's fancy to have a video showing a big tomato versus small tomato, but we really need to get nutrient analysis done on food to tell if it's really better or not. I mean, having more, would you rather have, you know, more food that's depleted or a small amount of food that like has twice as much nutrition? I mean, any day I'd rather eat less food that has twice as much nutrition instead of more food that doesn't have as much. My number 6 reason for why I do not use the Mittleider method is just the ongoing expense of it all. I mean, you got to buy the 15-15 fertilizer, which candidly is quite inexpensive, but then you got to buy literally 20 ounces of their magic minerals for $14 plus shipping. Now, in my opinion, buying some trace minerals, you know, whatever the cost, it's definitely worth it, but, you know, I just got to say that for 20 ounces, which is, you know what, a pound and a quarter for 14 bucks plus shipping, that's a lot of money. I mean, I talked about it earlier. You know, here in town, I get 44 pounds of the azomite rock dust for about 22 bucks. So that's about 50 cents a pound. You know, that's significantly less money than the magic minerals that they're selling you. And so that's just the minerals. Now, what else do I add into my garden? Well, you can create your own soils and truly become more sustainable. You know, one of the things I also think about is, you know, for our gardens, we want to reduce the amount of inputs that are brought into the property to grow food. You know, I'm not entirely there yet, but you can do it if you have different resources and you have a large property. And, you know, one of these days I will have enough resources on my property so that I'll have to start bringing in considerably less. For example, I'm currently making my own thermal compost or bacterial-based compost. You know, you can make your own compost wherever you live with, you know, yard clippings, you know, gardening food scraps, dropped leaves, your own food scraps from the house and whatnot, and let the compost cook and make your own compost that you're going to enrich in your garden. Free source of nutrition to add back into your soil. I mean, often used manures can also be a compost source. I would rather use the plant-based sources, but you can also compost your manures. I do not recommend using uncomposted manures in your garden. You might want to mix manure with leaves and whatnot and make that into a nice compost, which I'd be totally for, because once again, that's a free resource you guys could have. Now, besides the thermal compost, another big component that I've learned about fairly recently is the fungal dominated compost, or the, you know, no heat or low heat compost. This is also critical because besides the bacteria in our soils, we want the fungi, and maybe the fun girls will follow. That's just a joke. But we want the fungal aspects in the soil because that's the whole part of the food soil web. And from what I've seen, that may be missing in a lot of gardens because people are not focusing on this fungal dominated compost. They're focusing on the bacterial based composts. So what the fungal based composts simply are composted decayed wood chips that make compost. Usually in about 3 years, if you inoculate them, they can be broken down into some nice dark rich black soil. If you're not familiar with this, be sure to check my past videos on supersizing your vegetables with wood chips and compost. And once again, I only recommend fully broken down wood chips, not whole wood chips, to grow in. Number 3, another compost you can make at your own place for free, no expense to you, is worm castings or worm compost. You want to get a whole bunch of pet worms, or you know, pick some up and put them in some food scraps. You know, put them in a pile of manure. I'd probably use mostly, you know, plant materials to put my worms in, and then they'll eat that stuff and they'll make the worm castings. I mean, these are 3 easy sources that you can make free and clear without any money, and then just bring in like the rock dust and maybe a few other things to dial in your garden so that you could get excellent growing results. Now, I'm not going to deny the fact that the Mittleider gardening method works. I think that any method of gardening, no matter what it is, that allows you to grow food because you wouldn't otherwise have done it is a great thing. That being said, I have specific reasons for gardening the way I do. And, I'd encourage you guys to make a list of the reasons why you're gardening. Do you want healthy food? Do you want to have to not buy any external inputs or, minimally buy inputs to be more sustainable? Do you want to have it easy and not have to think and not have to use your God-given brain to figure things out like I think we're all supposed to? Because, something that I'm also really into is brain plasticity. And that's not like, injecting plastic in your forehead like some people do. But that's about like exercising your brain like you got to exercise your muscles to create big muscles, right? If you don't use it, you're going to lose it. And, by thinking and always having to figure out stuff, right? Well, like why my kale has holes in it, you're going to be more plastic in your brain and create more neurotransmitters and whatnot, and your brain's going to actually grow and become stronger because, brain degradation is a big issue with especially people that get older. So I always want you guys to work your brain, and I think just by standard gardening in organic fashion using natural ingredients such as I teach, and once again, it should be no surprise to you that I teach organic gardening. It's growing your greens, and on my YouTube channel page it says I teach organic gardening. I'm not teaching, chemical fertilizers, things out of a bag and whatnot. I mean, there's plenty of other channels on YouTube if you want to learn that kind of stuff. And I'm going to teach you guys stuff I've learned, the stuff I've learned by the School of Hard Knocks, by having to do all this stuff and research it and learn it myself. And I just share with you guys what works and what works for me. Whether you guys choose to do that or not, whether you guys choose to, take all this information that I just shared with you as something, that you want to incorporate into your life, great. If not, that's great too. I'm just putting this out there to basically get my voice heard on my opinions on the Mittleider gardening method and how I think things should work in the garden according to nature, according to God, and how things were made on this planet. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, me explaining my opinions on the Mittleider gardening method. Once again, these are just my opinions. I'm not saying it's a right or wrong system. These are just what I think about it, and I want to encourage you guys to, think critically about what I've said. And, no matter what, I think the number one thing is that I want you guys to grow a garden. If the Mittleider gardening method allows you to do that because you don't want to take, my suggestions and go through the School of Hard Knocks like I did, that's cool. But I think by growing your own food and getting out of the industrial agriculture system, you're going to be far better off for the health of you and your family. Once again, my name is John Kohler with GrowingYourGreens.com. We'll see you next time, and remember, keep on growing.